What's up, everybody? It's time for my annual playoff predictions for the 2021-2022 NBA season. I'm a little bit late. The play-in games have already happened. In fact, some of the first-round games have already started. Been busy over here, a lot of things going on. Blame Elden Ring. Would you believe me if I told you that I had the Pelicans and the T-Wolves and the Hawks and the Nets coming out of the play-in? So I'm off to a great start, but we're going to go through the Eastern Conference, the Western Conference. I'm going to try to give my unbiased opinions. I'll do the best that I can. Obviously, I am a Celtics fan, but yeah, let's get into it. We're going to start in the Eastern Conference with the number 1 Miami Heat versus the number 8 Atlanta Hawks. I have the Heat in 6 in this series. The Hawks are an interesting team because they're talented, but they've underachieved for the majority of the season, but they're playing their best basketball right now, which is great for them. But I don't think it's going to be nearly enough to beat the Miami Heat, who I just think are a better coached team, a team that is more cohesive, a team that is definitely much more effective on the defensive side of the ball. I love Trae Young. And I do think just Trae Young's singular brilliance on the offensive side of the basketball will be enough to maybe win them a game or two in this series. But overall, I just think the Heat are going to be too much and too good. So I've got the Heat in 6. My second series is the 76ers, the 4 seed, versus the Toronto Raptors, the 5 seed. I have the 76ers in 7. In this series, the Raptors are really scrappy, especially defensively. They have a lot of length and strength, but I don't think they're nearly as talented as the 76ers team or nearly as good. However, they do have that BS Canadian COVID stuff going on where basically, they're still freaking out in Canada. Northern China, as I like to call it. So basically, Matisse Thybulle will not be able to play in Toronto because he is not fully vaccinated. So that obviously helps the Raptors, and I think it will help make it a more competitive series because I do think the 76ers are just better, But 76ers in 7 just because of the weird COVID stuff in Toronto. Toronto is a really hard place to play. And I don't trust fat James Harden. So I love Embiid. I think Embiid has had such an incredible year. And he's going to be the driving force to get the 76ers through this first round. Next matchup is a contentious one for me. The Celtics, the 2nd seeded Boston Celtics versus the 7th seeded Brooklyn Nets. I have the Celtics in 6 here. I don't think it's going to be nearly as competitive as everyone else seems to think. I think Vegas has the Nets with the 2nd best odds to come out of the Eastern Conference. I know that before the season started, I think they were like title favorites or in the top 2 or 3. Even on ESPN, with all of their experts picking the first round matchups, they had, I think, 11 experts pick the Celtics and 10 pick the Nets. So everyone seems to think this is going to be a really close, a really divided series, very evenly matched teams. I don't think that. And I want you to hear me out because I'm sure people are going to see the Celtics uniform and think that I'm just biased. But I like to think that I'm not that biased, that I am a little bit more objective. I know we played the Nets last year in the first round, and that year I picked the Nets to sweep us. So I had zero faith in this team last year, and I thought the Nets were going to crush us, which they more or less did. But this is not the same team this year. And I think the Celtics are a much better basketball team than the Brooklyn Nets. Now, I get that the Brooklyn Nets have arguably 2 of the 3 best players in the series, but it's a weird thing to say the Celtics have more depth considering they pretty much play 7 or 8 players, sometimes 9 on most nights. But the difference, I think, between these teams in the depth is that those 7 or 8 players that we play, all contribute. And I don't think you can say that about the Brooklyn Knights on a night-to-night basis. Some guys contribute sometimes. I think the last time we played them, LaMarcus Aldridge played really well against us. Now I don't even think he's in the rotation. You're going to be getting minutes from guys outside of Durant and Irving, who I just don't know if you can really depend on. We also know statistically that the Nets are a disaster on the defensive side of the ball. And I think that's important. I also think it's important that Durant, who is, arguably the best player on the planet, is 33 years old and has had multiple injuries and is going to basically have to play every minute of every single one of these games if the Nets want to win. Because the second he comes off the court, their team is a disaster. And I just don't know if he can do that. I guess we'll find out. But there are a lot of question marks in my mind on the Nets side, whereas the Celtics basically have one question mark. How well can they play without Robert Williams? Now, there are some stories, some rumors that Robert Williams will be back during this first round series. I really don't know if that's true. But honestly, I'm evaluating this series as if he's not coming back. And we'll talk more about this in the second round. But I think even without Robert Williams, the Celtics can win in 6. I just think they're so solid on both sides of the ball. They're really feeling themselves these last couple of months. They're really well coached. Another thing you can't say for the Nets. And I just think they have more than enough to win this series. I do think that, there will be a couple of games that Durant and Irving will just be so brilliant that maybe they'll steal a couple. But the Celtics in 6 is my prediction. Last first round series in the East, the Milwaukee Bucks, the 3 seed versus the 6 seed Chicago Bulls. I think this is going to be a pretty one-sided series. I've got the Bucks in 5. The Bucks are not as good as they were last year, in my opinion. Last year's team was much better. They had an aura of invincibility about them that this year's Bucks team doesn't have. But the Bulls are just pretty much the exact opposite of the Celtics. They started off really well, and then they've just been falling apart ever since then. So they're carrying no momentum into the playoffs. They're playing their worst basketball of the year. They're still missing key pieces. Lonzo Ball has been out. And I just think they're going to get absolutely smashed by the Bucks. I don't think this is going to be a close series at all. So let's go into the second round, Eastern Conference. Heat, the first seeded Heat versus the 4th seeded 76ers in the second round. I have the Heat in 7. I think this is going to be a fantastic series. But again, I don't trust fat James Harden. I don't trust that team dynamic with James Harden, as he's such a new arrival and he really hasn't been able to work his way into the team. And the reason I have it going 7 is just because I genuinely believe that much in Joel Embiid, that he's just so dominant and he's been so good all year carrying this team that I think just him as a singular force alone can make this a really interesting series. But I just think the Heat are a better team, top to bottom, better coached, and will win a very competitive series in 7 games. And that brings us to the other second round series, the Boston Celtics versus the Milwaukee Bucks. This is a hard one. So this is where my bracket might get messed up quite a bit. And we are doing playoff predictions. So, I have to predict the future. And if I'm going with my heart, I'm going to predict that Robert Williams comes back for this second round series, maybe even at the end of the first round series. And if Robert Williams is even like 85% of what he was before the injury, I think the Celtics can beat the Bucks in 7. I think getting that second seed and getting the home court advantage is huge. And I think we need all the advantages we can get, because I am terrified of Giannis. I think Giannis is the best player on the planet. I think he's number 1. I said that before the season started. Nothing I saw this season made me change my opinion about that. I know he's not going to win MVP. Jokic deserves it, but I still think Giannis is the best player on the planet. and he terrifies me. But if we have home court and we've got Robert Williams back, I think we match up pretty well with the Bucks. And like I said, the Bucks are not the sort of borderline invincible team that they were last year. I think they have taken a small step backwards. But again, this could go either way. My mind tells me that the Bucks will win in 7, but my heart says Celtics in 7, and that's what I'm going to go with. So that gives us an Eastern Conference Finals of the Miami Heat, the first seeded Miami Heat versus the second seeded Boston Celtics. I know, not very original, but that's what I've got. And I have the Celtics winning this series in 7 as well, getting revenge against the Heat, who beat us in the Eastern Conference Finals in the bubble year 2 years ago. And that will put the Boston Celtics in the NBA Finals. Again, this is all just predictions, and don't say that I'm biased, because last year I had the Celtics getting swept by the Nets in the first round. I just really believe in this team at this moment. The last couple of months, the Celtics have been the best team in the NBA, best offense, best defense. Their point differential has been incredible. And again, if Robert Williams can come back and work his way into the rotation like he was before, I just think that this team has the potential to go all the way. So let's move over to the Western Conference, where I think things are a little bit less interesting, if I'm being honest. I really do think that there's 4 teams in the East, not including the Nets, that could easily make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't feel that that's the case with the Western Conference, but obviously I could be wrong. First matchup is the Phoenix Suns, the first seed, versus the New Orleans Pelicans, 8 seed. I think this is going to be a super easy series for the Suns as well. I have the Suns in 5. I think it's great that the Pelicans made the playoffs. I think it's really funny that they made all of these terrible trades, and the only good thing for them was Zion. And then somehow all the trades ended up leading to a team that actually has gelled pretty well together without Zion, and that Zion now is like the worst part of this team. No one's quite sure when he's going to come back, if he's going to come back, when he comes back, if he's going to be a Pelican. I don't know. I just think it's ironic and a little bit funny. McCollum has been exactly what this team has needed to be competitive. Might be a little bit weird seeing a team in the playoffs that's 10 games below 500. But again, I don't think that tells the whole story, because the Pelicans are another one of these teams that started terribly but has played really well of late. That being said, you're going to hear me say a lot of great things about the Phoenix Suns. I don't think the Pelicans can do more than steal maybe a game from Phoenix. Phoenix is just too good, too consistent for too long. Next matchup is a really interesting one in a strange way. Dallas, the 4 seed, versus Utah, the 5 seed. This is interesting because I think on this podcast last year, I picked Utah to win it all. I was finally convinced that Utah could get it done in the playoffs, which they've never done. And obviously that didn't happen. And I really thought that was the year. If they ever had a chance, it was last year. And now I'm just so off on Utah in the playoffs because of just watching them fumble it every single year. That being said, I've got Utah in 7 here, and that is because obviously Doncic has his strained calf. He strained his calf in the last game of the regular season, and he's not available for the first game, and he's probably not going to be available for the second game. And I don't really know when he's coming back. Nobody does. And we don't know when he comes back, how compromised he's going to be. And obviously, Doncic is the entire Dallas team. This is not a Memphis situation without Ja Morant, where they somehow find ways to win without him. I think without Doncic, Dallas is absolutely screwed. So even though I don't have really any faith in Utah this year, I do think that they're going to win their first round series, because without Doncic, Dallas is in real trouble. Next matchup is the 2nd seeded Memphis Grizzlies versus the 7th seeded Minnesota Timberwolves. And I have the Grizzlies in 6, but I do think the T-Wolves can make this a competitive series. This is another team that didn't start off that great, but is playing their best basketball of late. And they have some really nice momentum. If you watch the play-in game, people were kind of making fun of the T-Wolves because they beat the Clippers to get into the playoffs. And excuse me. They won their play-in game to get into the playoffs, and they started celebrating almost like they had won the NBA championship. You had Pat Beverly jumping on the table. The fans were going crazy. And I love it. I absolutely love it. Look, the T-Wolves are a team that have been bad for a long, long time. They have a tortured fan base, and you take whatever victories you can get, man. And I think for a team like the T-Wolves, just like maybe if you were a Sacramento fan, just making the playoffs is such a big deal and means so much. You know, it means the world to watch a team just be competitive and have a chance. And I think that's what the T-Wolves have given their fans. And I think it's great. I'm here for it. I think Anthony Edwards is one of the most exciting and players in the NBA and one of the most fun guys to watch. I think he's going to have a great series against the Grizzlies. But again, the Grizzlies, I just think, you know, they've been so good all year with and without Ja Morant. And I expect them to get it done in this first round series. Next matchup is the Warriors versus the Nuggets. And I have the Warriors in 7. The Warriors have had a very weird year. Started off super hot, got super cold. Steph Curry's had a kind of like a shooting slump for the majority of the season. He's had injury problems. I don't think he's healthy right now. We're not sure how much he's going to be affected health-wise in this series. Clay is back, but he's not really back yet. It almost feels like a Paul George situation where after he broke his leg, he came back, and he really wasn't back until the year after he was back, if you can follow me on that. I think it's going to be a similar situation with Clay. Draymond's missed a lot of time. This team is just kind of a mess this year. That being said, the Nuggets are Nikola Jokic, and that's it. Like, all their other good players are gone. I'm not even sure if I can name another player on their team. Will Barton, maybe. So yeah, I have the Warriors in 7 just because I think the Nuggets don't have enough talent to get it done. So that leads us to our second round matchups. The first seeded Suns versus the 5th seeded Utah Jazz. I have the Suns in 6 here. I could honestly see it being in 5 as well. Again, I have no faith in Utah this year, and I just think the Suns are too good. And we'll get into that more in the finals. And the next matchup in the second round is the 2nd seeded Grizzlies versus the 3rd seeded Warriors. And even though I'm not high on the Warriors this year, I do have the Warriors winning this series in 7 games. Even though the Warriors have all these issues with consistency, having the same players out there, health issues, are people even going to be able to play? They have experience, and I do value that kind of experience, playoff experience, championship experience in the playoffs. And the Grizzlies just don't have it. I think the average age of the roster for the Memphis Grizzlies is 24. So as good as they've been this year, and they have been awesome, really fun to watch, I just don't think they're ready. I don't think teams this young without playoff experience get it done in the biggest moments historically. And I think that's going to continue this year. But watch out for the Grizzlies in years to come, because this is a young team, young core that's really exciting and should get better every year. I just don't think they're going to have the experience to get it done this year. So that gives us a Western Conference Finals of the 1st seeded Phoenix Suns versus the 3rd seeded Golden State Warriors. And I have the Suns winning this in 6. So this is where all those kind of consistency and health issues with the Warriors, I think, will rear its head. Now, look, these are our predictions. We never know what's going to happen. I almost don't want to say it because I don't want to jinx it. But Chris Paul has had obviously a nearly impossible time of staying healthy in the playoffs. So, you know, the Suns are a Chris Paul injury away from being right into this competitive mix with all these other teams. I think as long as Chris Paul stays healthy and they have their whole healthy team, I really do think that Phoenix is in a league of their own this year. But you just never know what's going to happen with that. A healthy Suns team, I think, still handles these Warriors in 6 games. And that gives us an NBA Finals of the Boston Celtics versus the Phoenix Suns. And I have the Phoenix Suns winning in 7 games. Breaking my heart. Oh, Celtics, so close. But again, I'll say it once, I'll say it 100 times. I just think it's Phoenix's year. Last year was close, but Chris Paul wasn't 100% healthy. And it was really only the second year of Phoenix being this incredible, consistent team that they are now. This is the third year, and I feel like this is their best moment. This is going to be their best moment. Chris Paul is on the verge of being too old. He's been on that verge for quite a while, and you're only going to get so many chances. And I think this is it. I think it's this year or bust for the Phoenix Suns. And I just think they have enough to get it done. They have been, I think, the best team in the NBA wire to wire. You could make an argument that the Celtics are the best team in the NBA for the last couple of months, but that argument is only true because of how brilliant they were in those last 2 months. It's not like the Suns fell off. The Suns were just great and consistently great from beginning to end. And I just love everything that their team has. I love that they have the shot maker with Devin Booker, the guy who can get you clutch baskets, make his free throws. I love that they've got the rim runner, rim protector in DeAndre Ayton, the big man. I love that they've got the incredible perimeter defender in Mikal Bridges. And I love that they've got that veteran leadership that knows how to get players the shots that they want in the places that they want in the right times in crunch time with Chris Paul. I just think that mix is so perfect and so tailor-made for success that I don't see anybody beating them. Now, who knows what's going to happen? Like I said, I predicted the Jazz were going to win last year, and that went pretty poorly. But that is my prediction for the 2021-2022 playoffs. Phoenix Suns win the championship in 7 games, beating my Boston Celtics. If you have made it this far in the video, I'm sure a bunch of you, like people from the Philippines, want to yell at me and say the Golden State Warriors are going to win and that I'm stupid. I don't mind. I love to hear all opinions. This is just my opinion after all, based on, following the NBA and watching a lot of these games. But I would love to hear in the comments, who do you think is going to win this year and why? Or even, why do you think I'm wrong? Other than that, I hope you enjoy the video and enjoy these playoffs. I think it's going to be a really fun year.